Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 16 of my tutorial on how to make Android apps. Today we're going to do something really fun. I'm going to finish up the Android translation app. I'm also going to show you how to convert speech to text as well as text to speech. And what we're going to do first off is I'm going to jump over to my phone, show you exactly how to properly set up text to speech, and then I'm going to show you our finished Android translation app. Okay, now to properly set up text-to-speech, you're going to have to, on your device, go into Settings and then scroll way down here to the bottom to where you see Language and Input. Some of these are already in there for you, as you're going to see, but if you want all of them, you're going to have to install some of them. Then go Text-to-Speech Output. And then we're going to click on the little Settings icon here next to Google Text-to-Speech, and then we're going to come down and click on Install Voice Data, and you're going to see all of the different languages we're going to be able to use. After you install those, you'll be able to use them in our application. Now, inside of my application, I'm going to click on Speak, and then I'm going to say, what day is it? And you can see it automatically pops up there. If I click on Translate, you're going to see all the translations for all of the different languages that we use. And then with the spinner, I'm going to be able to click that and click on whatever language I want these to be read in. So as you can see, it translates your speech into text, and it translates into numerous different languages and then converts that text in those translations to speech. So pretty cool. Okay, so there you saw the final translation app as well as how to use text to speech, and this is the final application. You just saw it, and basically you click on Speak. It's going to allow you to say a phrase. It's going to go in the editable text box. If you hit translate, it's going to come down here into this text view. You're then going to be able to select languages and click read, and it's going to read in the chosen language. So pretty neat. I didn't feel any need to show you how I drug buttons over here and drop them in there. I know you can figure that out. However, we are using a spinner here, and there's a couple things to point out. And when I say spinner, that's just the part where you click on it and it shows the different language options for reading the text. And I gave it the ID of lang_spinner, and of course all the code is available in the description underneath the video. I then populated the spinner with an array that we're going to call language array, and I'm going to show you how to set that up, and everything else here is basically the same. So let's jump over into strings.xml, and I'll show you how to set up that array so that the spinner has the right languages in it. Okay, so here's strings.xml, and we're going to also create a couple additional strings inside of this because we are going to have to state the phrase that we want to show up whenever the user says that they want to say their phrase. So I am going to give this the name of speech input phrase, and let's say that we want to just put, say, the phrase. And we're also going to have to handle if the device doesn't support speech to text. So we're going to come in here and let's just go STT not supported message. Good enough. And then that message is going to be your device doesn't support speech to text. And now let's handle the array that we're going to use for our spinner. And to create that, we're just going to create a string array like that. And I'm going to give it the name of language_array, just like you saw in the spinner there a second ago. Close that off. And now whenever we wanted to, I would have loved to use all the different languages, but Android only supports a limited number of the languages that I would want to use here. So, for example, I cannot use Arabic, Chinese, or Danish. So I'm just going to be stuck with all the rest of them. So I'm just going to put item and the next item that I want in my spinner. And I'm going to need a couple of these guys. I'm also going to have French, German, Italian, Portuguese, and of course you saw the different languages that were supported whenever I showed you my phone in the settings area. Russian and Spanish. So there we got those. And that's all we're going to have to do in strings.xml. Okay, so we're going to save that. Now what we're going to do is jump over into myactivity.java. And the very first thing we're going to have to do is to use text-to-speech, we're going to have to implement an interface here. And that specific interface is going to be text-to-speech. And that's on init listener. And it's going to give me an error here that says that I'm going to need to implement a couple different methods. Click over here and just click on implement methods, and the very specific one is on init. Click OK, and we'll worry about that in a little bit. Then I'm also going to have to create a couple other different fields here that we're going to be using. So very first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to be defining the spoken language we wish to use by default, and those are called locales. So I'm going to have current spoken language. So this is going to be the default that we're going to use, and I'm going to start it off with local US. and I'm going to show you a couple other different things. We're also going to create a couple other local objects for languages that are not in Android Studio. So if I typed in locale dot, well, let me show you something else first. Let's create, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create an array of locales. And this is just going to make it easy for me to search for these different options using indexes. Everything's going to have the same index. Now, for example, if I would type in locale, you can see right here all the ones that show up here. So we have all of these different guys that pop up inside of here. Well, one of the ones that will not show up inside of here is Spanish for some reason. Say I'm looking for it. There is no Spanish. It's a little bit goofy. So if I want to use Spanish, what I have to do is create it myself. So I'm going to go locale and just call this local Spanish. Like this is equal to new locale, and I'm going to be able to go in here now and establish the language, and then afterwards I'm going to establish the country specific. So that's going to be Spanish Mexico is what that stands for. And I'm going to have to do this for a couple of these different languages that I want to be able to speak in, 4 to be specific. One of them is going to be Russian, and Russian's really easy. It's just RU, RU. I'm also going to do this for Portuguese. Portuguese here is the language is PT, and the country I'm going to use here is Brazil, and Dutch. And for Dutch, it's just going to be NL and NL. Okay, now that I have those set up, I'm going to be able to go in here and add these to my little locale languages array. So the first one is going to be Dutch, and then I'm going to have locale French, locale Germany, or German, there we go, locale Italian, and then I'm going to put Portuguese inside of here, Russian, and Spanish. There it is. So now I have that all set up. Then I'm going to have to create a text-to-speech object, and this is just going to synthesize text into speech for me, which is very awesome. Just call this text-to-speech. That works. Yeah, let's make this private. And like most of the apps I do in this tutorial, the code's not optimized. I want to try to keep everything as fresh as possible and also keep all the different code blocks sort of separated so you guys would be able to copy and paste and create your own things if you needed to. So these tutorials are geared towards helping you, not making perfect programs. They work pretty well, but I want you to learn this isn't about me showing off and saying, oh, look what I can do, and then making it impossible for you to actually use the code. Alright, and then I'm going to also define the selected language in my spinner, and we're going to use that to be able to get the proper language to use here, and we're also going to use it later on to get the actual phrase based off the language that we want to use. So that's what the spinner index is going to be, and I'm just going to give it the default of 0 at this point, and we're going to be changing that, of course. And the array that I was talking about that's going to hold all the translations that are sent over from our web service, all divided up into the different language blocks, I'm going to call this array of translations. Alright, great. Now we have that set up. Now we're going to have to do a couple things here with onCreate to make the spinner work properly. We're going to, very first off, go into and create a language spinner. And of course this is a spinner. And we're going to find the view by ID, and then we'll get it, and that's just rd dot, and then it's going to be language spinner, because that's what I called it, and that's over in the layout file. Now, to be able to be alerted anytime the language spinner has been changed, we're going to come in here and go set on item selected, and then we'll go new adapter view dot on item selected listener. Click on that. It's going to automatically create the methods for me here on item selected and on nothing selected. And now if I want to store inside of here the actual language that was clicked on inside of my spinner, I'm just going to go current spoken language and make it equal to languages and then pass in index. This is labeled I like to change this to index. So this is the index of whatever was selected inside of the spinner here. So I'm going to change this to index and change that to index. And current spoken language, as you can see, if we come up here, is this guy right here. And languages, so what we're going to do is whenever they select that, we're going to get the index that they selected, and then we're going to set it for our current spoken language. Okay? I'm also going to store the spinner index to use elsewhere. So I'm going to go to spinner index is equal to whatever that index is. And I don't need to do anything with on nothing selected, or I don't want to anyway. And then to finish this off, I got to come in here and create or initialize the text to speech, and just go new text to speech, and then you just pass in this. There we go, and it works itself. Now, one thing that's important is whenever the application is closed, we want to allow this to go away, the text to speech option, and to do that we're going to create on destroy, which I'm just going to come in here and go generate and come on here and go override methods, and then come in here and click on destroy. And there that is. Now inside of here, I'm going to go if text-to-speech is not equal to null, which means we have it set up. I'm going to go text-to-speech stop, so that will release it to be used elsewhere. And then text-to-speech shut down. And then you could put super on destroy if you'd like. And there you are. So that's handled. Now I'm going to handle the on init part of our code. Where did it go? There it is right there. And this comes specifically from us implementing this interface, text-to-speech up here. So what we have to do inside of here is just initialize it. And you're going to do that pretty much in exactly the same way as well. First thing we're going to do is check if the text-to-speech is available. So we're just going to go if, and don't memorize this stuff. You can just copy and paste it. Text-to-speech, success. I want to change this to status, because I like that better than just an I. I'm then going to set I'm going to create an int result, and it is going to set our language here. So text-to-speech dot set language, there it is. And then I'm just going to put our current spoken language, which is going to start off as English, like I showed you a second ago. And we're going to do this to check if the language data or the specific language is available or not for us. So we're going to go result is equal to text-to-speech again, dot language missing data. And we're also going to go or result is equal to text-to-speech and check that the language is actually supported. And there we go. So if either of those occur, we're going to pop up a toast here. So make text, and we've made many a toast. I'm going to come in here and go language not supported, and this is going to be toast length short, and then show the toast. There we are. Else, if this was not a success, that means that it did not properly initialize. And we'll create another toast. No point in typing all that out again. And we'll just say text-to-speech failed. Alright, so we got that all set up here. Now I'm going to jump over into ActivityMy. And whenever they click on the read button, we want the information to be read. And I created an on-click event here. And I'm going to have this created over inside of our code for us. So just come over here, click on the little light bulb, and create that for me. And there it is. What we're going to do here is whenever that is clicked on, we're going to guess that the spinner is changed, or we're just going to use the default current spoken language that they want to use to speak out the text. So we're going to go text-to-speech again and set our language. And we're going to set our language to the current spoken language. We're going to also check that there are actually translations in our array of translations that we created. So array of translations, and we'll check that the length is greater than or equal to 9. That will tell us that there's some stuff in there to translate. Another thing that's going to happen is whenever we do the translations, it shows Arabic first, and then it shows Chinese, and it shows Danish. Well, I'm not going to be able to do those first three, so I'm going to have to create a workaround, and that workaround is basically everything. Let's go back here so you know exactly what's going on. Alright, so I have all of these guys. I have Dutch and French and German, Italian, Portuguese, Russian, and Spanish. Now, this would be index 0, and then we would go on from there. What I want to do is skip the first 3 that we have there, so no problem, because whenever we are searching in the translations array, this guy right here, array of translations, this is going to hold all of the translations in their own separate index. So I want to skip the first 3 and start with Dutch. Okay, so that's how I am jiving the spinner, having a different number of data sets in it than the actual translation array. Alright, now I'll show you exactly how I'm going to do that. It's very simple. So we're going to go text-to-speech, and we're going to say speak, and then what it's going to speak is going to be in the array of translations, and I'll fill this up here in a second. And specifically, we're going to get the spinner index, the current selected thing in the spinner, and we'll add 4 to it. So that is what's going to be spoken, and then we call text-to-speech again, and qFlush. And what that is going to do for us is it's going to flush out whatever text was maybe previously in there to be spoken and add in our new text. Else, if we have a situation in which we don't have any translations to speak, we're going to pop in another toast. So just copy that, paste that in there, and then say something like translate text first. So we need some words to say, so they need to provide that to us. And everything else there is exactly the same. Alright, so now all this stuff here where we're getting the XML data, none of that changes. Everything's going to be exactly the same as it was in the past, so we'll just scroll through all of that. This, however, down here on post execute is going to have to change, and this is where we're going to get this data, the string to print, which was the languages as well as the translations for each of the languages, and we're going to throw those in a separate array. One thing I want to do, however, first off is make our text view scrollable inside of our app, and a simple way to do that is just go translate text view and set movement method, and then put inside of here new scrolling movement method. There we are. Now our text view with all our translations is going to be scrollable. Now whenever we have the translations, like I'll have Arabic and then I'll have colon and then I'll have whatever the translation is. And then on the next line I have Chinese and colon and then whatever the translation is. Well, I want to get rid of the Arabic part and the Chinese part and just get the actual translation and store those inside of my array. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a string, and let's just call this string of translations. And I want to get rid of the language part and the colon part. So that's going to be equal to string to print. And then I'm going to use a regular expression to get rid of what I don't want. So I'm going to say replace all. And what I don't want is words. Could be a whole bunch of words. And that's going to be the language name, followed by, well, put a plus in there, meaning more than one word. And then I'm going to also say a space and then a colon. So I want to get rid of that specific thing using regular expression. I have regular expression tutorials if you have any questions about that. And then what I want to replace it with is something that more than likely isn't going to show up in the translations, and I'm just going to use this hash mark or number sign or whatever you want to call it. So that's going to handle that, and it's going to get my string that's going to be cleared of all those things, and it's going to have hash marks between the different language translations. Well, now what I want to do is I want to store those in the array of translations, which you saw me use before. And to do that, I'll go string of translations and split, and then use my hash symbol inside of there again. And there you go. And now I don't need to do anything else, and the array of translations is going to have the translations that I will want to speak out onto the screen, and they will be in the proper index, and you saw exactly how I did that. Okay, now I'm going to handle being able to input using speech and then converting that to text. Well, I have a button here, and that is speak, and whenever that is clicked on, that is going to fire a method that we're going to create here in a second called accept speech input. So just come over here again, and let's create that for me over in the activity main. And I'm going to take this and put it down below because I don't want it right there. And let's put it on right behind on post execute. And make sure we keep it in our class so we don't, this is an inner class here that's handling the calling and grabbing that XML data. So let's throw this guy in there. First thing we're going to have to do is create or start an activity that will convert our speech into text. So that's an intent to do something. And we'll go new, intent. And more specifically, we're going to have to call recognizer. And what this guy does is it's going to pop up that little pop-up you saw on the screen that's going to tell the person to start speaking so that it will be able to convert that. And you just go action, recognize speech, and there that's created for us. And it's going to handle it for us. Really nice. This stuff right here, I'll say what it does, but again, this isn't something you memorize. This is something you just copy and paste. We're going to go put extra, recognizer intent, and extra language model, and then recognizer again, intent, language model freeform. Now what this does is basically says use a language model based on freeform speech recognition. Okay, so it's telling it specifically how to recognize the speech. Alright, so it's not something to memorize, it's just like a complicated part of making this work. So I wouldn't focus too much on it, but it's telling it the way to recognize the speech, okay? So intent, and then we're going to go put extra, recognizer intent again, extra language, and then locale get default. And you may be able to guess here what this is doing is basically saying that we need to recognize this speech or expect them to use English in this situation because that's the way my device is set up. So get whatever the default locale is on the device at this time and use it to convert speech to text. Now we just need to prompt the user to speak. So we'll go put extra. And this is where we're going to put in that phrase that we had here, speech input phrase. Okay, so that's the phrase that's going to show up. And to define the thing that pops up there or the text that pops up, we'll go extra prompt and then get string that we want to show up inside of there, and then just our string dot speech input phrase. and that will show that phrase whenever the speak button is clicked on. Now we're going to do some things that could go haywire, so we're going to create a try block, and we're going to call for our activity to start for result. There it is. And we'll just pass our intent inside of it, and then we'll pass in 100 just to differentiate that this is this request code that we're going to be using here. And if that doesn't go well, catch activity not found exception, for an E inside of there. And we could pop a toast in here and make text. This again. And if we want to use our specific string that we put inside of there before, r dot string dot, and this is going to be speech to text not supported message that we have over in our strings.xml file. Then after that, we can go toast, and the length, let's just make it long, and then of course show the toast. And there it is. And now after accept speech input is done executing, we're going to be calling another method, and this is going to be called onActivityResult. onActivityResult. And there's going to be a request code, which is the 100 that we put right here. It's going to be passed in. There's going to be a result code, which is going to tell us if everything went fine. And then the actual data. And make sure we come in here and put that curly brace in there. And this curly brace, let's make that go away. There we go. And then we're just going to double check to make sure that the request code is equal to 100, just like we thought. And that the data actually contains something, and we can do that just by checking that it's not null. And the result code came back good. Result okay. In the situation in which all of that went fine, which means that we properly got data from the speech and was converted into text, we are then going to create an array list, strings, and let's call this spoken text because this is going to be the speech converted into regular old text. And to get the data or the text that was converted, just go get string array list, extra, and then we call our recognizer again. There it is. And extra results. So now we got our speech converted into text, and we can put this in our editable text box, which is called words entered. Edit text, find view by ID, and it is r.id. Words edit text. And to finish off everything, we can go words entered and set text. And if we want to get that text that was converted or that speech that was converted, we just go spoken text.get and 0. And that is it, guys. There is the whole entire translation app. You can see all the imports went through there. And like I said, if you have any questions, there's one little error. Let's go down here and check it out. Don't want to leave you with an error. No big deal. Just come in here, close that bracket off right there. All right, so that's everything. Of course, all the code's available in the description underneath the video. You can feel free to do absolutely anything with it. You don't need to ask my permission. And please leave your questions and comments below. Otherwise, till next time.